Well, hello everyone. Let's kick off, and thank you for joining the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar. It looks like we don't have any sound for this video, so anyone that has registered, we will share this video in the follow-up recording for you all. So today's webinar is all about scaling boutique brands, a very popular topic. I'm delighted to have so many of you join us this afternoon. So my name's Eloise Hanson. I am the host of today's webinar, and when I'm not hosting webinars, I'm the editor of Boutique Hotel News. We are an online trade publication. We cover the global boutique, lifestyle, and luxury hotel industry. Today's sponsor is Duetto, a hotel revenue strategy platform. We do have a short video to play for you. If the sound does not work, once again, we will make sure that that video is included in the follow-up. Oh, alas, no sound. Never mind. Once again, the content is there. You will receive this in your inbox. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so everybody that has registered will receive a copy of that recording within 48 hours. So let's move on to the next slide, please. So we're going to spend around 45 minutes in conversation with our panelists today, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, please submit these using the Q&A functions at the bottom of your screen, and I will get round to asking those as and where relevant. So before we get stuck in, let's meet our speakers for today. And for ease, I'm going to move from left to right as per the PowerPoint slides. So let's kick off with Benjamin. Over to you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting. Yeah, just quick introduction. I'm Benjamin. I'm the founder of Ethos and Limestone Capital. Ethos is our experiential lifestyle hotel group, and Limestone is our private equity investment firm. And we started both around the same time, about 8 years ago. In terms of our boutique hotel brand, I'm dialing in from Mallorca, which is our 8th hotel in the group that we're opening in the next couple of days. And yeah, we have 2 other openings coming up in the next year, so the group is growing nicely. And then on the Limestone side, we invest into hospitality businesses, brands, and real estate, and we have about $1 billion AUM under management. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you, Benjamin. Pleasure to have you. Keith, over to you next and welcome.
Thank you for having us. Good afternoon. Keith Evans here, founder of Lifestyle Hospitality Capital, LHC, which we launched about 2 years ago. Company is broadly focused on investment across the hospitality space, focused in lifestyle. So principally investment in hospitality real estate, lifestyle brands and management companies. A big focus of what we're doing is basically creating and scaling lifestyle hospitality platforms, so fully integrated with real estate, brand, technology, management infrastructure, all held within the underlying platform, working primarily across the US and Europe. But yeah, good to be with you guys.
Thank you, Keith. And last but by no means least, Halima, over to you.
Hi all, good afternoon. I'm Halima Aziz. I'm from Criterion Capital. We're a fully integrated real estate investment platform, managing the entire life cycle from acquisition and planning all the way through to brand creation and operations. Our flagship boutique hotel brand, Zedwell, is known for its windowless by design concept, disrupting London's affordable market scheme. We're a high-yield, wellness-focused hotel concept, offering traditionally affordable stays in AAA central London locations. So we're scaling rapidly, backed by a model that's operationally lean and investment efficient, hoping to bring Zedwell to an additional 15 sites over the next 3 years.
Oh, looking forward to it and seeing all of you grow your brand. So thank you all for joining us today. Let's take a look at some context, because I think it's really important that we provide some background as to why we're here. And these headlines that are on your screens now really do all the talking for me recently. These are some major acquisitions or sales that have happened recently. So last month in May, Queensgate sold the European arm of its boutique hostel brand Generator to Brookfield for 776 million euros. That's an increase of about 326 million since Queensgate first bought the brand in 2017. Moving across the slides, you can see how in April, Marriott agreed to buy Citizen M for $355 million. And at the beginning of this year, in February, IHG acquired Ruby Hotels for 110.5 million euros. So there is a clear and growing appetite for boutique brands. These are major acquisitions which indicate the perceived value of boutiques as a stable and scalable asset class. On to the next slide, we can see some headlines that directly relate to all our speakers on the panel today. So May 2025, Criterion bought its second site in the City of London to expand its Zedwell brand. Limestone acquired the Nobu Hotel in Shoreditch, which will be repositioned under its Ethos Hotel and Club brand. And Lifestyle Hospitality Capital, which acquired a majority stake in the Dean Group, has recently bought a hotel in Miami, which will become the US flagship of the group. Now, these are all examples of organic growth. So whether that be office to hotel conversions or brand differentiation and repositioning. And maybe a defining characteristic of boutique brands is that entrepreneurial leadership and that highly selective development strategy. So let's kick off our conversation. We are going to be talking about scaling boutique brands. This question is open to all of you. We've just seen from the slides here that we are in a market that is being dominated by consolidation. Therefore, is organic growth a realistic path for boutique brands? If I may, I'll kick off with Keith for this one. So, your thoughts, please.
Thank you. I mean, consolidation is a trend that probably won't stop anytime soon. I think it kind of meanders a little bit in terms of which segment and which sector and to what level of scale is going on. But as we've all seen over the last few years, consolidation has, to a certain extent, certainly accelerated in the lifestyle space, and arguably more broadly as well. And it's just such a long list of founder-driven brands that have over time been created over the last 5, 10, and 15 years that over the last 2, 3, 4 years have all been consolidated up to the larger C Corp businesses. Ennismore was an example of that. I used to be the CIO of Ennismore, and when we had Ennismore 1.0 version, we had the Hoxton brand principally. And shortly thereafter, I think today it's now 14, 15, 16 brands within that lifestyle space. Nomad, Graduate, Standard, Ruby, Citizen M, the list goes on. So a couple of things around consolidation, and then move on to the organic growth of boutiques. Some of the drivers of consolidation, two main ones, is that the listed companies need to continue to deliver net unit growth. And depending on where you are in the cycle, it becomes more and more challenging to deliver that level of net unit growth. And they do generate a lot of cash in those corporates, so they do deploy that into M&A in order to support growth. And then probably where you're starting to see more and more of that consolidation in lifestyle and luxury is because they're looking to consolidate into those high growth sectors. And thankfully at the moment, if you follow where the consumer is, the consumer is certainly trending in the direction, it has been trending in the direction of lifestyle and luxury. So that kind of explains that piece, and that road will continue. It will meander a little bit with the consumer, but that appetite for net unit growth probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And then in terms of just what does that create? I think what's interesting is that it creates like an open space now, right? An open space for founders and creatives to get back involved and deliver the next decade of innovation, if you will. Which is really, really an opportunity probably for all of us that are on this call, as well as probably many that are listening in. So it's a super exciting window that's now opening up as a result of that, which we can talk about. I think in terms of being able to deliver scale in a boutique business, so just following that line of logic, there's a lot of ingredients that are important. I'm not gonna, obviously product positioning and all that stuff goes without saying. But I think ultimately alignment with your partners is probably, if not number one, two, and three, right? So organic growth can be via your propco, it can be via the different ways that you grow your business from an asset light perspective, whether that's management agreements or some form of joint ventures. Alignment with your partners is the most important thing, right? I'm assuming you have your brand, your product, and everything, nailed down in the right way. So just really being able to figure out how to have a shared vision and a shared strategy for achieving objectives and goals together and working well together, knowing that in our industry, there's always bumps in the road. There's always cycles that you need to get through. The quality of the partners that you're working with, whether those are capital partners, management agreement partners, joint venture partners, or all of your different partners that you work with across your operating model, like that is, I think, the key to success on scaling.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Keith. Is there anything that Halima or Benjamin would like to add to that before we bounce on?
I guess I would probably just kind of iterate on what Keith just said, because I think the biggest risk of scaling anything that's boutique is to basically standardize, and basically you're starting something boutique, you're starting something original in order to not standardize, right? And then as you scale, you have this inherent conflict. That's number one. And I think the second piece that Keith said is incredibly important around alignment. We started out basically saying we don't want to align with anybody. We're going to be vertically integrated and kind of do everything from the capital stack to the management company and the brand and so on and so forth in-house, at least to start with, in order to be able to deliver something that's kind of truthful to our vision. And of course, that also has limits, right? So over time, that kind of is part of growing up and scaling into new markets or into new verticals, is finding those right partners. And so I think staying vertically integrated for as long as possible, I think, is at least for us kind of key to success, to be able to be truthful to that vision and not have to start writing SOPs.
Very good point.
Halima, did you want to chime in?
I think, to reiterate of what Keith and Benjamin just said, it's a trade-off between retaining the control of the brand that you've created and crafted over however many years, and acknowledging the scalability should you choose to partner with someone else. I think what Benjamin mentioned is really important. We're a similarly vertically integrated company that's been really reluctant to partner for fear of losing that operational control, but also end-to-end control over what the brand looks like. But as you start to expand into different geographies, and that's certainly not an area we've yet to enter, it becomes a much more complex operation. It's very simple when you're in one geography, as we are today in the UK, to select your partners from everything from capital through to management. But the moment you decide to go to 50 hotels, 100 hotels, or even internationally, it opens up a different conversation in terms of how to scale in a profitable way. I think the draw of the bigger hotel chains is always there due to their strength of their distribution, the value it adds to the assets. But in retaining that control, you have to be really confident as well in your own ability to build up operational depth and a scalable model as well. You mentioned you don't want to write SOPs, which I completely agree with. having just gone through a process of having to edit 100 SOPs. But it's and I'm sure this will come up later, in maintaining consistency throughout the brand, particularly if you're growing one brand in its entirety. There is an element of branded standardization that you have to undergo. And it's a trade-off between when are we becoming a little bit too much like the big boys, and how are we still retaining our creative control?
Sticking with you, Halima, for a moment, I had a question set aside around the rationale between or behind developing your own brand versus, maybe acquiring one or taking a stake in one. And I think Benjamin and yourself actually touched on it. It's that it's a balancing act between building something that you love and maintaining control over that versus how do you scale upwards when you are as vertically integrated. So what lessons have you learned so far, Halima, and what are those operational challenges that you are facing when trying to expand organically?
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, sort of the rationale behind developing your own versus branding, whatever asset, we're quite driven by sustainability and repurposing buildings which are not really fit for traditional hospitality assets. So for us, our business model thrives upon a flexible brand. There aren't many in the global hotel chains which will allow, for example, 100% of the room stock to be windowless or underground. And for us, it was really a brand born out of necessity, a need to answer calls to repurpose obsolete buildings. We created Zedwell as well, partially to disrupt the traditional hospitality model, and question the need for the inclusion of items like TVs or windows in the room. I appreciate that we're all sort of sitting along different sectors of the hotel. We are very much in Zedwell in the affordable sector. So we're competing with the likes of Premier Inn and Travelodge and Zed Hotels, who have quite a standardized model, because volume tends to drive a standardization. We decided that we could reimagine a traditional affordable hotel room, and by creating our own brand, we wouldn't be constrained by some traditional hoteliers' ideas of how something should be ran. So creating Zedwell from the ground up, it really allowed us to design every detail, from the room structure to the configurations to the guest journey, around the concept of sleep, as we so chose, but that could be something for everyone else. I think a key lesson that we learned, not to reiterate what we mentioned earlier, but the importance of owning that entire development lifecycle. Certainly in our earlier builds, we partnered with we engaged in a lot of D&B contracts. We today have construction in-house, and a large motivator behind that is lessons learned from initial builds where either cost or program overran massively, because there was really a clear hard line between the operator and therefore the client and the constructor, and let's say alignments weren't exactly on the same page. So I think for us it's really key to take that all in-house. So yeah, it will go back to vertical integration for me.
Staying with you briefly before we bring Benjamin back in here, you highlighted about consistency just a moment ago. How are you maintaining that level of consistency when it comes to a degree of brand standards when you are now operating across multiple locations?
That's been one of our main challenges operationally, maintaining consistency, less so amongst different buildings, but more different guests and expectations, particularly when we introduced assets like underground hotels. Whilst we don't want to be too rigid, we have had to, as I mentioned, draw up branded SOPs. We've had to become a little bit more corporate in our thinking than we'd like to have become, but a large customer feedback driving that is that they could stay at an underground hotel, and because the team had been built up almost as if it was a standalone boutique hotel to suit the specificities of that building, they had such a different experience to when they stayed at, for example, our flagship hotel. And we realized that to scale appropriately and to command, we like to call it a passionate tribe of followers, people who really understand the Zedwell promise, we had to ensure that they would be expecting and receiving the same service across the board. And now today we have 5 Zedwells operational. I mentioned 15 over the next 3 years, likely in a few weeks, that'll be an even higher number. To build a customer that will return, and therefore the most profitable customer for us in terms of lifetime value, we really had to be careful about discrepancies amongst our brand, and that came really down to design and build. So SOPs is a part of it, brand standards is a part of it, and that's why I mentioned vertical integration quite a few times throughout this, but standardizing even acquisition strategy. I appreciate we probably have quite a flexible approach to real estate compared to some of our counterparts, but assessing what is the type of assets, for example, that are suitable for a ZWell. And like that, building a bit of a brand book for each discipline within the company. That's been the best way for us to maintain consistency. But I'll say we're a work in progress. We're a few years into operation. And certainly I have a lot more to learn from Benjamin and Keith in terms of maintaining that consistency.
Benjamin, let's bring you back in here to talk about the lessons that you've learned. You highlighted that it was key to be as vertically integrated as long as possible. Could you talk us about your journey, perhaps some of the challenges that you've faced, and then we'll go on to talk about what you look for in sites.
We shouldn't use past tense, it's present tense. Challenges face, right? It never stops. So I mean, our story is basically, I mean, we started with as everybody, we started with one property, then relatively quickly 2 and 3, and then pandemic hit, and so we kind of had to shift strategy pretty quickly. So 2018 we started, right? 19 kind of get grooving, and then 20 is when pandemic hit, and so we had to pretty quickly early in the process adjust as everybody else. We had the big benefit of not being operational yet, so we basically decided to just double down on the acquisition side and not worry so much about getting started operationally. So in the end, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. The biggest challenge, I think, when starting a brand is obviously one, staying true to a vision and validating your kind of ideas and experiments, and then once validating them, actually acting on it. My career prior to this was in technology, and we would run experiments and A/B tests and build features and kill them again. Problem in this world is obviously when it's a bit harder to adjust and course correct after the fact in the world of atoms versus bits, right? But yeah, I think kind of staying nimble, being true and data driven on the experiments and looking at things, what is working, what is not working, I think is one area. Generally, I think the biggest challenge for us is probably growing talent from, I mean, as you grow at the speed that we're growing, it's just not for everybody, right? And so someone can be an incredible contributor and leader in a 100-person company, might be very different in a 1,000-person company, right? Or I think even on a property level, managing a hotel that it has a 300 euro ADR, but that's super successful and doubles the ADR in 24 months. You get different guest expectations, and so I think growing the team and the talent and investing in the talent to kind of come along for the ride, I think is always a big challenge, and is something that just requires a lot of attention and care and empathy and training, and it's growth is just hard, right? I mean, starting a company is hard, but like growth is hard on everybody. It's not just for the executive team or the founders. It's like it's just hard for everybody. And so I think talent is probably one that's worth calling out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And more so, just to clarify, right? Like, because everybody looks at hospitality and is always asking this very clever question of like, oh, how do you find talent? And do you have trouble finding people? It's like, we do not have trouble finding people whatsoever. I think where it's a never-ending journey is to develop that talent then, right? And building that relationship and that bond and that partnership.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to stick with you for a moment, Benjamin, before we
Sure.
move on to Keith. You highlighted that in the early days, you were more acquisition heavy than you were. The focus shifted from operational to more acquisition. So what do you look for in a potential site? And how do you benchmark performance? Because the boutique hotel segment arguably is difficult to quantify. And I'm not sure from the benchmarking companies where the boutique segment would truly fit. So with that in mind, throwing that all over to you,
I think for us, there's different kind of metrics, right? That you can track. You can, the underlying metric, I think, in the end is always a financial one. And I think it doesn't matter what the logo is or what the category or the segment or the demographic. In the end, it's a financial return that has to work out, because we're all in competition with not just other folks in the industry, but in the end, hospitality is a small segment in the alternative investment world, and there's very, very strong competition in that world, right? If that's data centers or if that's logistics, or there's many different places, right? We don't have to get into that, but that's what we're competing with in the end. And so for me, everything has to make sense in the end financially, right? For it to be sustainable. We're not we don't do this for a pure passion play, right? It has to be sustainable. Number one. I think number two, I think in terms of differentiation, or in terms of kind of measuring success, besides financial metrics, is obviously, again, people, right? And I would start again with people inside of the company, right? So what's your NPS score? You have plenty kind of people metrics, and what's your retention? I think our industry generally has a really high attrition rate, right? My executive team, we have, very little attrition, and we're trying to, as I said, kind of build this bond and build this partnership. And then the second part of people obviously is our guests, right? So how are we doing in terms of reviews, in terms of what are people writing and commenting and liking and sharing our stories, and how they're responding to our storytelling and our experience and what we offer. So all of this has to be super, super closely monitored. The tools are there. You have no excuse at this point not to have daily reports on everything that's going on in your world. And so yes, I think data-driven metrics to enable kind of real world experience and real world performance is I think something that probably all of us work on every day.
Do you looking back at the actual site and perhaps what you look for? And again, Keith, Halima, happy to hear your thoughts on this. Is there for instance, a specific room count that might qualify for a boutique brand investment? This has always been a question that I get a lot. What is a boutique hotel? How many rooms does a boutique hotel have, or what truly is a boutique brand? So when it comes to potential sites, are you flexible with that, or do you have your own standards in mind? Benjamin, let's set on.
Oh, sure. So we have we're very optimistic, right? I have 8 rooms in Madagascar on the beach, and the picture you showed earlier is 164 in London, and it's both they sit very comfortable in their respective strategies, and very hopefully will be both successful in their own means, and I would consider both of them boutique-ish, right? Obviously, the small kind of barefoot luxury hotel by the beach is probably a bit more boutique than a city center hotel with 100+ keys. But yeah, as you know, from an investment standpoint, we're super opportunistic. We have no rules in that regard. Not on geo, not geographically. We can invest anywhere in the world. We can invest any size. Our smallest hotel, yeah, probably is Madagascar. We have like 9 keys in Corsica, and then probably our average is in the 60s, 70s. That's for the Ethos brand where we feel really comfortable. My personal opinion is that after 80, if you want to be generous, maybe 100 keys, but after that, it becomes nearly impossible to deliver personalized service, right? Just for the team to remember people's names, remember use tech enabled, right? Use the tools to memorize and perform personalized service, but it just becomes extremely hard. And so that's for a 5-star boutique brand like Ethos. For Loisium, right, our wine hotel brand, all the hotels are over 100 keys because we have a big kind of function and MICE business with it. So again, I think, and I would still consider them kind of boutique-ish, right? They're cool hotels. So long story short, we don't have a rule around it. We were super opportunistic, and it's really about what fits. I mean, we have 8 different brands now, so it's really about which brand, how do they define themselves? What do they feel comfortable with? What is their expectations? What they want to deliver to the guests, and the experience that they want to deliver, and so that's what really matters. So.
Thank you, Keith.
I'd echo that. Apologies, you're moving over to Keith. I think I'd echo that we also don't have any set parameters around how small or how large we'd go. It's very much about the return and about the right purchase. But I find it really interesting actually to follow off the back of Benjamin, because we actually very much on the affordable 3-star end of the market, but our flagship hotel is 700 keys in the heart of Piccadilly Circus. So it's a bit of a stretch to call it a boutique hotel, but I think when we refer to Zedwell, we refer to ourselves as a boutique brand, largely because we're a differentiator and we're distinct from who our comp set is. But I think it's very interesting to look at each asset on what you can do with it. Benjamin probably has a few more brands to work around with. We very much exist on sort of everything Zedwell, and then if that doesn't work, we may go down the route of third-party brand. But even in developing our own brands, we've sort of taken a back to front approach to it. We look at the real estate that we have and almost craft brands around that. And I think that's allowed us to be quite flexible in both the acquisitions we make, but also the operations that we do. So I don't think, to answer the exam question, that there's an ideal size for a hotel. But I think it's really fun to have some creativity in, if it's a really small hotel, we probably wouldn't do anything under 40 keys just to stay as lean as possible and to keep our costs low. But we would go sort of all the way up to over 1,000, which definitely puts us into a category of very little personalization, very little touch with a guest. And certainly our guest journey is very tech enabled throughout. But it's interesting about what aspects can you retain to still distinguish yourself as a boutique hotel, where it's a differentiated experience for the guest that marks it in their mind as an experience as opposed to just a commodity.
It's interesting, right? Yeah, it's in a way it's a mindset, and I think one of the key things here is also that it ultimately, as you heard just now, it's quite flexible, right? So from a boutique mentality is, yes, personalized service, community driven, flexible approach to product concept, right? Not standardizing, really one of one is what we do with a lot of our properties. But yeah, that flexibility is probably one of the DNA within the boutique space.
Keith, can I stay with you for a moment? Because during your intro, in fact, it wasn't the intro, I think it was the top end of this conversation, you highlighted the alignment with partners as being such a key driver to this. When you are looking for a partner, and I'm shifting this now to a lender or a JV partner or an investor, what questions should you be asking of them?
Honestly, I think a few of the things that are the most important is just having really, really clear view on the strategy and the vision of what you're trying to do. I know it sounds quite basic, but at the end of the day, that's what everything should come back to. What was the vision? What is the strategy? Oh, that will iterate as you move along. But that starting foundational work with new partners, whether it's an equity partner, whether it's a lender, is really having that strategy and that vision crystal clear. Because there always is going to be bumps in the road, right? And you're always going to need to iterate, whether it's in a building, a different geography, a planning issue that you're dealing with, whatever it is, especially when you're building out integrated platforms, right? Because within an integrated platform, as we've been talking about on this call, you've got so many different components that you're working with and working on in parallel. I mean, yes, you have real estate, and within the real estate, you have all the complexities around delivering an incredible product, the design process, the planning, the architects, the interior designers, et cetera, right? But when you're building a vertically integrated platform, there are so many other layers that you're bringing together brand, technology, community building. The list goes on. You're building teams and you're continuing to reestablish those teams and bring them into new geographies. So, and you're bringing in other new partners along the way, whether they're other lenders into your platform, other technology partners, other PR partnerships and marketing and digital. So there's just so many different things there that if you're working with a platform strategy of scale, it's so important that your foundational joint venture partners are really, really founded in that strategy and that vision, and that you're just communicating incredibly transparently at every step of the way, so that the kind of the relationship of meeting once a quarter for me is just, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you should be speaking with your partner probably on a daily basis, if not more. So I think that's just key, because when you're setting that all out, then you understand really, are you commercially aligned? Is everyone looking at the financial risk and return in the same way? Is your framework and your toolkit and your underwriting all like fully aligned across the board, across your stakeholders? Is the structure of your partnership set up for success, set up to achieve a certain level of scale, set up to achieve certain scenarios of liquidity? You might have geographic objectives to grow into certain countries or certain exposure into new countries, cultures, whatever it is. Well, obviously some partners can work, you can work with them in some countries and others no. So you kind of really have to look down that 3, 5, 7 year roadmap and be able to anticipate the tension points, the growth points, and be able to kind of, and you can never know anything 100% upfront, right? It's not possible. But I think the foundation of that partnership, alongside the strategy and execution of the founders and the people driving the business, are hugely important, because if you don't get it right, you can end up spending a lot of your time on trying to fix later on what you didn't fix up front. So yeah, and I think just that cultural alignment is really important as well, right? And when people partner, sometimes they're thinking about the organization you're partnering with is very important, but ultimately it's the people, right? It's the people that you're working with every day, every week, that ultimately is the foundation of the relationship. So yeah, I just see that it's just such an important thing, and particularly in hospitality, and particularly in the parts of hospitality that we work in, we just know how relevant that is. Mm-hmm. The lender side, just to touch on the lender side for a second, because you asked, I think on the lender side, what we've learned over the years is that, generally speaking, certain preference for working with lenders that have sector experience. That kind of goes without saying, but just to state the obvious, a lot of what we acquire over the years and what we're doing now, we're repositioning significantly the assets that we're acquiring, physically, operationally, design, execution, across the board, right? So you're going through inevitably some form of disruption, whether the hotel is closed or you're redeveloping an office or whatever it is. You've got a period of disruption, you've got a period of ramp up, and you need a lender who understands that, right? Because if a lender who doesn't understand that just sets up a lot of really strict covenant trips when you're in the middle of a CapEx program or immediately after opening the hotel, it just doesn't make sense, right? It's not fit for purpose. So Yeah, and over the years, when you've done a lot of different deals with a lot of different lenders, you kind of know which lenders are the right lenders for the right types of deals, right, or the right jurisdictions. So with experience does help with that, and obviously you build relationships with these lenders over the years as well.
Do you think that the mainstream banks or lenders understand the boutique sector, or is this more a conversation for those specialists?
Some of them do. Some of them definitely do. It'll often come down to whoever's leading those banks at the time, what direct experience they've had, right? So some will have had great experiences and therefore want to continue investing into that strategy, and others less so, in which case it might be slightly more challenging. But I do find that across the board, you've obviously got a lot of non-traditional lenders who have entered into the sector over the last 3, 5, 7 years. I do find that a lot of them understand the hospitality industry pretty well. Many of them have had experience on the equity side of things as well, certainly at least the companies, if not some of the team members. So that does tend to help, to be honest. But I wouldn't rule traditional lenders out, because I think some of them do understand the business.
Mm-hmm. I can see that we've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So where possible, I'm going to try and merge with my agenda just to see if we can get through some of these in the remaining 15 minutes or so. Keith, I'm going to stay with you for a moment because I can see one that I think works here. So comparative to Halima and Benjamin, actually, you have invested in other brands too, but Lifestyle actually took a majority stake in Dean Group. So what was your criteria for evaluating the investment risk of a boutique brand, and what's your ambition with Dean Group? What's next?
Yeah, so Dean Group, we effectively created the Dean Group about a year and a half ago, by carving it out of a larger company that was having some issues. So we created the Dean Group beginning of last year, effectively, and that business was just a really, really interesting business. It was, founded in Dublin. It kind of grew up in Dublin over the last 10 years, had some of the best bars, restaurants, hospitality experiences in the country and certainly in the city. It had a unique portfolio outside of Dublin in Cork and Galway and Glasson. So we saw that portfolio of just incredible assets, great design, great concepts. Many of the hotels had been open for a short period of time just before COVID or just after COVID. And so we saw just this great canvas of like true, authentic, like hospitality, lifestyle hospitality assets, very heavy in food and beverage. So food and beverage, bars, restaurants, rooftops was representing, when we bought the portfolio, roughly 50% of revenue. Just to give an example, we can talk about room counts, et cetera, later. But so we saw this and we said, this is really a unique portfolio that was created by the founder over 10 years. Still needed a lot of kind of best practices. It needed certain things to be evolved in the business. So we basically carved all of that, created the Dean Group out of Dublin with a very clear view that we were going to invest in the assets in Ireland that we had. So we've done a couple CapEx programs, a few planning permissions, and all of those projects are effectively ongoing right now in Dublin. And we had a view to effectively scale that platform across Europe and the US immediately. So we acquired the Dean Group once we restructured and created the Dean Group Q1 last year. And then last year we added a total of 11 hotels to that portfolio. So we started the growth. We added Munich, we added Berlin, we added Miami. So it was good kind of the first year to get on both sides of the Atlantic and start that kind of international expansion. And while we were doing that, it was just a really interesting journey of kind of effectively, in a way, building out a management infrastructure, rebuilding out a tech stack, going through all of the brand architecture, brand strategy, brand identity work, and that takes you a good part of 12 months to work through all of that, to bring in a global C-suite, into what was an Irish company at the time, right? So just getting that vision out there and being able to get a lot of people to support and to want to be a part of that. So it's really unique. So yeah, I think we saw characteristics that we thought would translate outside of Ireland, that were scalable across Europe, that was fiercely independent, had great design, and a real, almost like, I mean, of the 45 bars and restaurants that are in that portfolio, there was about 33 when we bought it. They're pretty much all except for one were independently created, internally operated, doing 35% departmental margins. So it was like really unique, strong ethos on the food and beverage side. And plus culturally, they were very attuned to the local art community as well as the music community, which is something that we continue to build out as we go into new markets. So yeah, it was just a unique situation that resonated really, really strongly with us as a business that we thought could do really well outside of Ireland as well as inside.
There was and it's a question that's come in from our audience actually. Barry Sternlicht at the NYU conference talked about the need to distinguish, especially when it comes to the indie brands or the lifestyle brands now. And I think he actually commented on the power of call it e-commerce, but the social media landscape that we find ourselves in, the celebrity ambassadors and influencers, and what that means for the boutique hotel sector. More of a comment here as opposed to a question, but it absolutely feeds into, I think, what a lot of us have been talking about is this need to have such a distinct brand, maintaining control of that brand, something that is a bit different from what currently exists in the market. And how do
or maybe more than a bit different. I mean, I worked with Barry for many years. I was glad to see him come out and say that. A bit surprised given that it was kind of a support for the independent and boutique segment. I think it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity for us to define what matters to consumers, what matters to the founders of the business, and what can resonate. It's also an opportunity to deliver. See, this is, I think, a key word is delivery, because there's a lot of brands being created by the C Corps or maybe people less passionate than us about the hospitality sector. And you'll find that in that creative world, a lot of the agencies are speaking to one another. A lot of them are starting to use AI, and they're using the same words to describe the same things, and they're all trying to play into the same consumer mindset. And then copying various designs and copying food and beverage concepts. So there's a lot of that going on right now. So the opportunity there is to have something extremely distinct and that really resonates with your consumer base and where you are, and really brings in the local community. And I mean that in a real way, not just in the hotel buying drinks or buying food. Is the art community with you? Is the music community with you? Is the film and fashion industry with you? Or are they in your living spaces of these hotels? Is it a place where everyone wants to connect? Like, bringing all that to life, that's the opportunity. It's also the challenge. But yeah, the opportunity is to deliver, because I think a lot of these brands and concepts that are going to come out will have big promises and probably relatively limited delivery. So the opportunity is to deliver.
I think the keyword on this is fun, right? I mean, kind of design is dead in a way because everybody can hire every design company. And marketing and like storytelling, again, right? You can outsource and everybody can say whatever they want. But the real question is like, what happens there, right? Is it fun to go? Like it's life is quite simple that way, I think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right, most new brands that don't have that passionate founder base that Keith called out, they fail to deliver on fun, right?
Yeah.
And so in a way, I think that's a good kind of way of measuring success of differentiation. Is like, is there, do people have fun? Do people smile? Do people come back? And again, like whatever if it's art or music, or I mean, there's plenty different types of audiences that you can pull in, but but they all have one thing in common, is they want to have fun.
Yeah.
And so that's it. That's the differentiator, right? That's the hard thing.
We're in the business of delivering fun. I love it. What better industry to be in?
My next firm, I'll call it Fun Capital.
You heard it here first, guys. Halima, I'd like to bring you in here to talk about brand affiliations, right? We've just touched on perhaps new brands coming to market, and I will flag that Hyatt has just launched its latest soft brand called Unscripted within the sort of lifestyle luxury space. Halima, has the group considered an affiliation with a soft brand or a consortium? Why not?
Has it been considered? Certainly. I think every boutique brand that's got sort of more than 5 properties will have the big brands knocking down their door. Because, I mean, Keith touched on it earlier, everyone's on a mission to grow their portfolios. Why and why not's really interesting. Why? I mean, it's the strength of distribution. They've got, or at least what they promise, a big brand will promise you a higher ADR, a lower cost of sale, and which matters to some, a higher value per room or value per bed, as it were. So those are the whys. The why not, creative control, to an extent, brand standards and SOPs. Though I mentioned them earlier, we very much tailored them to suit what matters to us as ownership. And when you enter a branded environment, you're all of a sudden subject to a number of standards that perhaps don't matter to you, but particularly in our case, we created Zedwell as a response to not having any brand out there that was flexible enough to suit our real estate. So uniting it or consolidating it under a big hotel brand seems a little bit anti-ethos to us. Now, that's not to say in 2 years, 5 years, the big brands won't become very flexible with real estate, driven by the same constraints that we're facing in the real estate market. But I think where we stand today, we've certainly got a lot more flexibility in our growth, our build, and our operations in remaining independent than we would were we to affiliate. Now, I would never rule it out. I think certain acquisitions, like what IHG has just done with Ruby, certainly make sense on both the brand and Ruby's perspective, in fact. But I think it's a trade-off that really has to be carefully considered, and ultimately it's also financial. Benjamin mentioned it earlier, but everything is really about return. And I think if you've invested into a brand or you've grown a brand out of a desire to eventually exit, it may make sense at one point to consolidate with the global hotel brand, or in fact, to make that your exit. So I think there's lots of considerations that go into it, but key is really knowing, either in creation or soon after, what long-term ambitions are. For Zedwell, we're a family office, and our intention is to continue growing the brand globally. Now, if that opportunity presents itself to brand under someone that could take us globally at a rapid pace, or at a pace where we still felt very comfortable with expansion, we would never say never, but it would have to be pretty enticing to cede certain controls that I think have made us be able to move with such flexibility and speed as we have.
Staying with you for a moment, Halima, a question from the audience. What sort of challenges do you have with local authorities when applying for a change of use on adaptive reuse, e.g. from a car park to C1?
Yeah, so presuming this is coming from the UK, we have quite a few restrictions in place today in terms of change of use, particularly in office conversions. I think they're becoming increasingly more common, but as are the regulatory environments surrounding them. There's a lot regarding marketing of the space. Ultimately, in this particular example, the conversion of a car park, I think it was not dissimilar to our original flagship, something that nobody thought would go through, that even if we got planning for it, it either wouldn't be commercially successful or something would fall apart along the way. So the initial conversion from a car park to a hospitality asset was one that took a lot of wondering the best way to put it. Overcoming a lot of obstacles along the way, particularly in London. Councils have a lot of strength, but as do residents. And in certain boroughs, borough in question being Camden, there are certainly more requirements or more hoops to jump through than one would traditionally think. Having said that, we are fortunate to have quite a pleasant regulatory environment at the minute that is eager to bring affordable accommodation to the UK, and that has enabled a lot of our schemes to go through. I'm certainly seeing across the market competition for adaptive reuse projects has skyrocketed, as it's been proven that you can create traditional hospitality or traditional assets full stop out of properties that were otherwise viewed as obsolete. But navigating the planning risks is something that it is a risk that comes on board at the time of acquisition, investments for a third party, but also throughout operation, particularly when you consider scaling up. We've really made a name for ourselves in underground hotels and in acquiring underground. Now, there are a number of conditions that could come into play in 2-5 years' time that could make that, could essentially disappear our business model overnight. So I think one has to take a measured degree of risk when looking to change an asset from a certain category to another, and working with a strong planning consultant would be my best advice.
Thank you. And I know for the majority of today's conversation, we have touched or focused our conversation on hotel brands, but we are seeing broader convergence across the hospitality and living sectors. A question from the audience, this time aimed at Benjamin. Can you provide some background on the reason Limestone purchased the Bow House luxury short-term rental villas and the Fabio Home Services business purchases?
Sure.
Over to you.
Sure. So we invest into the experience economy in broader terms, right? So hospitality, hotels is one big piece of that. F&B is another big piece of that, but so is vacation luxury or luxury vacation rentals. We have a company called Emerald Stay, which we have been lucky to been able to invest about 7 years ago. We were the first money in, and we've led every single round since then. And we have over 700 chalets and villas in Europe. We just made our first acquisition in the States, so we're growing that brand internationally now. And yeah, I think Bauhaus was a part of that roll-up strategy. An amazing brand in France that is the market leader in Saint-Tropez. It has over 150, 160 villas in Saint-Tropez and Côte d'Azur. And again, the other businesses that we bought in that region were just complementary to our portfolio. Those are kind of management companies, maintenance, and so on and so forth. I mean, you can imagine if you run 160 villas in a relatively small city, there's a lot of hands on deck. We also made an acquisition in Verbier, where we bought a company called Verbier Exclusive, which has incredible product, closer to a hotel than a traditional ski chalet. These things rent from anywhere from 100,000 to 300,000 a week. So we have cars and drivers and chefs, and I mean it's like basically almost, I think of it sometimes as almost like running a private mega yacht, more so than a vacation rental in the way that I grew up, or that I remember it. So yeah, but it's an incredible business. We're going to continue to look at everything in the vacation rental space, and Emerald is a company we're very proud of.
With these brands, be it within the hotel space or perhaps adjacent sectors, are we seeing innovation from potential new partners looking for investment into these boutique brands, or are we seeing the same level of I like this, beigification or standardization? Benjamin, I'll stay with you for this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think hospitality is experiencing an incredible influx of interested people, capital, investors, partners. There's a number of reasons for that, right? You have basically a lot of institutions that are warming up to the category. They don't think of it as being such niche anymore. If that's investors, pension funds, lenders, and so on and so forth. So that's I think a big driver. The other then is that we're now in the third or fourth generation of or waves of successful businesses that have been built and successfully exited. And so, as institutions and partners of any kind look at any category, right? It's very hard to sell them an idea that has never been done before. That can only be done then with your own capital or with maybe family offices. But so there's this huge influx, right? And with that comes, I think, new perspectives, new ideas, innovation, technology. I mean, I think a lot of positive, positive development. And so I would broadly say absolutely, right? There's a lot of innovation in the space, a lot more people kind of taking it serious, also understanding it, being attracted by the very, very compelling risk return. I would argue that we as investors, we're if you compare hospitality with, let's say, software venture capital, right? And you look at the underlying assets of a VC fund, which are essentially, as the saying goes, 9 out of 10 kind of don't return any capital. You need that one winner, and the reality is probably more like 19, and having that one winner that kind of returns the fund. It's a very different dynamic than our business, right? And so I think if you look at the risk return and the inherent risk of our industry, it's very compelling. And for some reason, it just took a long time for more and more people to warm up to it. And even then, I think still we have. I mean, it's still a very small world, right? I mean, it's a very small industry, and there's still an enormous amount of market participants that don't touch hospitality, which might be a good thing also, right?
Thank you. I can see there's still so many questions that we haven't been able to get through, but also looking at the time, we're already 3 minutes over our allotted 1 hour on this webinar. So what I'm going to suggest is that we kindly and politely leave this conversation as it is now, but I'm going to flag to all our audience members that all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers are in the chat. Please connect, because there's so much more we could have carried on talking about today. So we will leave this webinar open right at the end for an extra minute or so to allow our audience members times to follow up on any of the links that we have popped into the chat there. I will say thank you to Keith, Halima and Benjamin for their time and contributions. I just have some closing slides that I would like to run through before I say a final goodbye. If we can please pull up the slides. Our next webinar on the 30th of June is talking about monetizing the guest journey. Again, a very interesting and exciting topic, especially when it comes to boutique and lifestyle hotels. So the link to register for that has been popped into the chat. And if you're interested in working with us across any of our digital events, such as these webinars, please do get in touch with my colleague Katie. Her details are on your screen and also popped into the chat. So once again, thank you for tuning in. Really enjoyed today's conversation. It could have lasted for another 45 minutes or so. Once again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our sponsor, Duetto. And have a good rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you all again on the 30th of June. So take care, folks, and bye for now.